Well, I wanted to kind of give you some context because everybody's been talking about this consolidation phase that Nvidia has gone through over the last 6 or 7 months. So I brought up a 3-year, 1-day chart to kind of give you an idea of how well Nvidia shareholders have done over the last 3 years. The stock was trading just around 25, 26 bucks 3 years ago. So we've rallied about 560% since that time, with the stock sitting just about $171 at this point. So this gives you a little broader view of what Nvidia has done. Maybe it's kind of settling into these valuations that it has, even though over the last 6 months we've seen valuations come in because growth, the E part of their PE, continues to grow at this point. So this has been a head scratcher probably for the CEO, for a lot of investors also, but let's put it into context over a 3-year period as opposed to just maybe a 6-month period where we've seen this thing flatline a little bit in a tight range. So I got another chart here that kind of gives you a little bit more clarity on a 1-year chart here, 1 year, 1 day. I've got some simple moving averages to kind of take a look at here. We've got in the purple here, we've got the 200-day simple moving average. That's been an area of support over the last year, but now we've finally broken through that level. So you've got to take that into any assessment of what's been going on. The 50-day moving average has flatlined, as you can see here. So we're now below both of those levels. I think this is really key to kind of take a hold of, because when the stock was hitting this level around the 170 price, that's been an area of support over the last 6 months, right? This is a really key area. But now, for the first time, the stock is below its 200-day moving average while it approaches that 170 key support level. So that's something for traders and investors to watch here. And if you look at the volume profile here, the 184 level has been an area of that consolidation. That's been a heavy area of trading as far as volume goes. We're now below that level by over $10. Now, where do you start looking to the downside for those first areas of support? Well, you can start looking at the 158, 157 level. Got a little volume node there. But then all the way down here at about 145 is going to be another key area of support if it does continue to fall here at this point. So take that into context. If you look at the momentum here, we've got the RSI, Relative Strength Index, about 38 level. So not completely oversold. Anything below 30 is oversold on a technical basis. But if you look at the RSI over the last year, anytime we're down at those levels around the 38, below 40 level, we start to see a rebound in the shares. Will we get that this time? I think that's one of the keys. And then also, if you look at the input to the overall market. Now, Nvidia stock has come in a little bit. That means it's only about 7% of the S&P 500. That's still the biggest chunk of the S&P 500. And then the Nasdaq 100, it's actually over 13% of value in that index. So you got to watch Nvidia because it affects what's going on in the overall indices.
All right, Tom. And what's the approach you would take for an example trade?
Well, it hasn't really been a falling knife. You got to watch this 170 level. As I mentioned, that might be an area of support. Maybe we get a rebound, or at least it just consolidates here above that level. I think that's going to be what investors need to watch moving forward, at least in the short term. It's not immune to what's going on in the overall market also. So I looked at a strategy that's neutral to bullish, that gives you that opportunity to profit from these levels that we're at down here near support. But then also it gives you that opportunity to potentially buy the shares at a lower price if the stock continues to fall. So I looked at a cash secured put, neutral to bullish here. I went out to the April 17th monthly option. So you got 3 weeks to expiration on this one, relatively short term. And this is one of those strategies you can be repetitive with. You can continue to pick a price or a line in the sand and sell puts on it with the expectations that it remains above it if you just want to keep the credit, or that you're willing to buy the shares if it continues to fall. But I went out to the April 17th monthly option, sold the out-of-the-money 165 strike put. You're going to collect a credit if the stock opens up here about 171 of about $4.10. That's what your potential profitability could be, $410 per put that you sell. But what it does is it takes your break even where you start to lose money down to that break even of $160.90. That's about 6% below the current share price in Nvidia. So I always talk about this as a twofold type of trade because it's capital intensive, because you might have to buy the shares if the stock falls below 165 and you get assigned on that short put if you're still short that put. You've got to be willing to buy the shares. Now, you can put a bid in for $160, $161, and maybe never get filled if the stock doesn't fall to that level. But it's capital intensive, as I mentioned. That's your break even. You want it to remain above there if you just want to keep that credit of 410 that you collected.
Crude is up almost 5%, so we're just shy of $95. The major averages are lower, as we said, led by the Nasdaq today, and we'll get much more into that. We've talked, Josh, yesterday that this really isn't all that complicated. We have no real sense about where this conflict is going, and in the time being, it is the bottom read on your screen. Oil's green, stock's red, plain and simple. And we'll just go with that until something changes.
Yeah, and I think the thing to keep in mind is that the vast majority of market participants are not actively playing this game where the market closes at 4 p.m. They try to guess whether or not tomorrow is a green oil, red stocks day, and then position themselves accordingly. Most people are just riding this out. And if you're active, what you're probably trying to do is fade overreactions in oil versus let me try to be the person that figures out the exact moment this conflict either improves or gets worse. It's a game that nobody can really play with a straight face and tell you that they have any sort of edge, because of course they don't. So you have to decide what you're doing in the market, what type of participant you are, what you're expecting to get out of this. I think it's perfectly okay for us to chop around, not make a lot of progress right now. We're digesting 3 years of above average S&P 500 returns. And if we have to go a quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters without much to show for all this volatility, truthfully, it all comes out in the wash. It's not the end of the world. If you are looking to do something that is a little bit more proactive, what you're probably doing is sticking to the stocks that are working at the moment. And those include energy, oil stocks. Valero still looks great, all of the refiners. But again, that's a fairly narrow lane. Most stocks are just chopping.
Hard to really have some high level of conviction anywhere as long as we remain in this sort of murky, foggy area, right, Malcolm?
Yes, but I think 4 weeks ago, when this whole thing first started, we could make the case that it's probably going to be short-lived. It's probably going to be a blip on this quarter's earnings reports. It's probably going to be a thing where it's a temporary shock to the system. I think as we go into now, earnings season rolls over into next week. We have CEOs presumably telling us that they can't quite forecast what their transportation costs are going to look like, what their energy costs are going to look like. The guidance that they give is going to be less sure than it would have been had this conflict been over before March was over. And so I think that we have to consider that negative sentiment and the weight that it could have on investors coming into earnings.
I think it's a great point. Right, the numbers are still expected to be good.
Yep.
Earnings expectations and estimates, even moving forward for the quarters ahead, are still good. Malcolm raises a good question, though. What happens if the narrative starts to deteriorate? How much say will that have into how the market trades?
Yeah, so I think CEOs are going to be somewhat guided. I mean, it's a legitimate point, right? Once the war's over, what is the short, intermediate, forget longer term, because I don't see longer term damage from this. What's that going to do to their input costs? Oil specifically. Here it talks about not going online for 2 to 3 months, getting back to where we were. Those are input costs that affect nearly everything you're wearing today, everything on this desk. So what's that do to inflation? But you know,
this is real material. I mean, you speak for your sport coat might be made with a crude oil alternative, but just speak for yourself when you're talking about wardrobes on this show.
Sorry.
I digress. Please continue.
Yeah.
Just didn't want you to soil anybody else's reputation up here when you should be singularly focused on your own wardrobe. Please go ahead.
So that's part of the issue. But then, you know, we're so consumed, justifiably so, by Iran. What we're not focusing on, even though it's in the headlines, is what's the damage to private credit. Every day, and that's euphemistically, we see gates going up and limiting withdrawals. These are long-term contracts they have, the loans, so there's an inability to pull that out. What's that do to confidence, though? And then when you get to what was else, we'll see at least one cut this year, maybe two. Are those completely off the table? So there's a lot to navigate here, and that's why I'm being very, very selective. We'll talk about it later in terms of what I'm doing. Basically staying pat. I raised some cash earlier on. I mentioned Taiwan Semi got too big. It's still arguably too big, but took some cash there. Other areas where I would have liked to have taken cash, I didn't, but it's not off the table.
Okay, so Rob, UBS today tries to lay out their best in what sounds like their worst case scenarios, in which they say a rapid resolution should see the S&P bottom soon and rise towards 7150 by year end. If disruption persists until end of April, we see the index potentially falling towards 6,000, which, you know, I think others have opined about that number too. A more prolonged shock could push the S&P towards 5350. That would be an attitude adjustment if that happened for a lot of people who've been positive on this market for many of the reasons that Malcolm said, because they've been trying to look past all this. You get down to 53.50 or even in the neighborhood, it's going to feel like a neighborhood you no longer want to live in.
Armchair generals now, aren't we? Whenever I talk to people about the stock market these days, they don't want to talk stocks or even sectors. They just want to jabber on and on about whether the Iranians or our president mean it, whatever meaning it actually entails. The war decided the markets fade again today, with the Dow tumbling 469 points, S&P plunging 1.74%, but the Nasdaq plummeting 2.38%. It was a truly hideous session as sellers anticipated a deadline passed and heavy bombing over the weekend. But after the close, the president said that at the request of the Iranians, he said that, he is going to extend the negotiations another 10 days and said the talks were going well. The amateur military strategist rolled over to President parsing those words again, wondering if the Iranians really did ask for an extension, and are the talks really going well? The armchair generals tell me that the Marines are ready to go. The 82nd Airborne's in play. These veritable warriors are telling me that the Iranians aren't going to open the Strait of Hormuz no matter what, no matter how hard the U.S. bombs them after the pause, because there'll be no agreement. Look, I'm not a military strategist. Periodically, I play one on TV. However, I am your stock tactician, and I can recognize an ugly market when I see it. The question we keep asking ourselves is, at what point can we buy things without needing to worry about an Iran-induced oil shock dragging the whole thing down, or do we have to keep selling and selling? Tonight, we're profiling Chewy, for instance, the online pet supply store, and Lemonade, the AI insurance underwriter. Those might be worth buying now that they've come down dramatically, right? But you'd be threading the needle, because barring an unlikely act of capitulation by Iran, we're not going anywhere except maybe down. Oops. There goes that armchair general thing again. There are literally thousands of stocks in this same boat as Chewy and Lemonade. Bad with war, good with peace. No matter what, though, the bottom is out of our hands. We can't control it. Witness tonight when the president moved the goalposts. Again, we just shrug. That's all we can do. So you know what I'm going to do? Tonight I'm going to turn the whole process upside down and think about what the war really means to someone who's simply trying to build a portfolio. We know we can't predict the outcome, and we can't control it. We can't predict the timing either, as tonight's bombing pause extension shows. What we can gauge is whether the stocks we like have much of a connection to war, or are they just going down because of the market more, or are they going down because something's wrong? Look, there are ample reasons to believe that the war is just going to drag on. The president keeps saying over and over again that he's going to wind the war up soon, even as he also talks about a possible ground invasion. We have to assume for the moment that the conventional wisdom is right. So let's deal with the hand we've been dealt. Why don't we pick an obvious stock and work through the process? A stock that everyone I know is selling, a stock that people are giving up on, a stock that I heard all day is done. Let's talk Nvidia. Yes. Let's match it against a checklist that could actually, in an unemotional way, determine whether it's worth buying before we get clarity on when the war will end. Stock fell $7 or 4% today, and it's truly a hideous session. All I heard today was Nvidia and its compadres have hit a watershed moment, and they are finished, and you've got to sell every single one of them. I heard that over and over and over again, which makes me say, do we buy them? First, we have to ask, is Nvidia stock down because of the war? I contend the war has something to do with Nvidia, but it's not totally quantifiable. I will posit this. Nvidia is a big part of the stock market itself. It's also the easiest stock in the world to trade. I think it's going down because it's so easy to get back in at a lower level. NVIDIA is a member of the depressing Mag 7, but are we really supposed to switch, say, to the Chem 7? An exclusive list of companies that will benefit in a long war? A list that my old friend Frank Mitch from Fermium suggests by Chemours, by Celanese, Dow, Huntsman, LyondellBasell, Olentronics. There we go. That's what you want. Sell Mag 7. Buy those. Just go ahead. Do it for me. Do you think they're more magnificent than NVIDIA? That they are levered to the Middle East destruction, so therefore they're as good as gold? No, better, because gold was down today. Right now, the Chem 7 are easier to own than NVIDIA. There's no doubt about that. They only work, though, if the war stays on and petrochemical facilities in the Gulf keep getting bombed. NVIDIA, on the other hand, works regardless of what's happening with Iran. At least their business does. The Chem 7 has a shelf life that could be 2 weeks, especially if the Iranians simply give in. NVIDIA, I don't see a foreseeable shelf life, other than when the journalists and the commentators tell me to sell it. Next, is NVIDIA down because interest rates are going up, largely because of war-related inflation? Entirely possible. Company will do better with lower rates because lower rates make it easier to build more data centers. That said, if the war ends soon and we have a new Fed chief, you'll feel like a moron for staying away from NVIDIA. You'll say, why did I watch that show? Third, is there an intrinsic reason that NVIDIA might be down that's incorrect? I think that's true. Right now, the tech industry is short on what we call compute, and it's also short on memory. Two different things. That means it's short the computers that have NVIDIA inside. They need more NVIDIA. They need hundreds of thousands more NVIDIA chips to meet the demand. But at the same time, memory chips separate have been going up in price, and that's hurt the sales of the adjacent products that also go into a server, like NVIDIA. The non-memory chips, including NVIDIA chips, haven't sold as well as they could because the high cost of memory means businesses can't afford all the machines they'd like. In the last few days, though, we've been hearing about a new technology Google has that obviates the need for huge amounts of memory chips, not NVIDIA chips, memory chips. If there's anything that alleviates the tightness in memory, then we have less reason to worry that NVIDIA's sales will be hurt by a memory shortage. In other words, it's a positive, not a negative. It's ridiculous how the stock is acting, at least in reference to the Google issue. That says, that's a buy NVIDIA right into the teeth of this decline.